Hello, welcome to English 201. My name is Rebecca Warfield, in case you've forgotten, but hopefully you remembered because you watched the syllabus video and we're well acquainted now. If you haven't watched the syllabus video, please make sure you do so and then take time to please read the full copy of the syllabus, which is available on Blackboard and in your email. It's really important that you are well acquainted and familiar with all the policies of the class. So I'll let you watch that video and take some time to watch the syllabus. But in the meantime, I would like to go over our first lecture for the day. Sorry, I'm adjusting the light because the glare on my glasses makes me look like an alien or something. Maybe I am. Okay, so for our first lecture, if you will, today, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the writing process. So a lot of people don't like to write, and it's often because they're not really sure how they write. It's really critical to remember that the writing process is just that. It's a process. It is not something that happens from beginning to end, and it's just done in a linear fashion, right? When we think of something that's a process, it means it goes through a lot. It starts in one place, it ends in another, and then it goes back, and there's a lot of movement, right? It's not from point A to point B. It's kind of all over the place. It's a zigzag, which is kind of cool if you have a brain that likes that sort of stuff. And now I don't know anything about you guys individually, but I have a hunch that considering you're in a nursing program, that you probably like things to be a little more methodical than that. So the bad news is writing definitely isn't going to be from point A to point B. However, if we learn our own methods, it does become methodical. And suddenly it gets very easy because you know your own method to writing. So, there's 4 steps to the writing process. We're going to go through them one by one, but then I'll talk about how you can mix these up a little bit. I'm sorry if I'm looking down. I'm looking at my notes here. So, number 1, we have the pre-writing process. So, pre-writing is just what it sounds like. It's everything you do before you actually write. Generally, this is the work you do before the pen meets the paper or your fingers meet the keyboard. So pre-writing is looking over your assignment and understanding what you're supposed to do. It's asking questions for clarity on the assignment, so you know that you are at least familiar with what is expected, right? All writing starts with understanding what you need to do. This also means you might, I don't know, sit in your car and, what am I going to write about today? Or wash your hair in the shower and come up with some ideas, right? This is literally the time where you're just kind of like sitting around thinking about stuff. Most of my pre-writing happens in the car and in the shower. That's why I'm using those 2 examples. It's from my experience. My greatest ideas come to me driving, generally number 1 driving, and number 2 in the shower. I don't know why. They just do. I hope you find the place where you think the best too. But again, pre-writing is anything that happens before you actually begin to write. It's not that you can't write at this point, but you're really just kind of making sure you understand what you're supposed to do and coming up with a few general ideas of what you might want to write about. By the time you are finished pre-writing, you should have decided, okay, I know I'm supposed to do this assignment, and I'm pretty sure I want to write about this particular topic. So by the time you're done, you should have an idea of what you want to do. For many writers, this is the hardest step, probably for most writers. For me, when I write, it's during the pre-writing stage. I feel a lot of it's not really frustration. It's almost like anxiety, like, oh my God, there's like a million things I could say. I have no idea what I'm even supposed to say. Please take comfort in knowing that at this part of the stage, you don't need to know what you're going to say. All you need to know is the general idea or topic that you want to write about. So by the time I'm done pre-writing, I might say okay, I know I definitely want to write about, mindfulness in the healthcare industry. I have no idea exactly what I'm going to say about that. That's cool. I don't need to know that yet. I just know all I'm going to focus on right now is mindfulness in the healthcare industry. So once you figure out your general topic, we shift gears. Now we go into planning. And that's when we start doing a little bit more work trying to decide what it is that we actually might want to say. I just want to emphasize at this point, we still don't exactly know what our paper is going to look like. So in planning, we start with research. What are other people saying about this topic? What are some things that I might want to include? What pieces of research are really good that I want to hang on to include in my argument? You might even then think to yourself, all right, what are the 2, 3, or 4 main points about mindfulness in the healthcare industry that I want to write about? So maybe after all your research, you say, okay, I'm really into this idea of breathing techniques for patients and meditation for healthcare providers. Cool. You've narrowed it down a little bit. So first in your pre-writing stage, you said, all right, I want to write about mindfulness in healthcare. Now you've narrowed it down in your planning stage to say, and I want to talk about breathing techniques for patients and meditation for providers. Awesome. That's a lot better. You're getting somewhere. Again, you don't need to know exactly what you're going to say about it, but the planning stage gives you the opportunity to decide a little more, let's call it the roadmap of what you want to say. During the planning stage, this is when you start maybe making a tentative outline. You might begin to draft some sort of thesis statement. You don't have to have it set in stone, but at least some idea of what your thesis might be. You might jot down any quotes that you want to use in your paper. So you're starting to gather your information, right? It's kind of like if you're in a science class, you don't really know how the experiment's going to turn out, but in the midst of it, you say, okay, I know to conduct this, I'm going to need this, this, and this. That's kind of what planning is too. It's the time for you to gather the things that you will need and sort of the game plan before you actually begin the paper or, in this analogy, the experiment. I should have a side note that I'm not in the healthcare industry, so please, if I use examples that are like slightly off, just bear with me. I'm trying to make it relatable and relative to your field. I'm sorry about the light is getting a little crazy again. I think it's because I flail when I talk. Okay, moving on. So we had pre-write, planning, and drafting. Drafting is when we actually start writing. So this is when you begin to do just that. You start to write your paper. I cannot emphasize enough that you do not just draft one time and you're done. You will probably draft 5 times, 10 times, 30 times, right? I don't know how many times you're going to draft, but I promise you it will be many. If you are not drafting many times, you're probably not writing a very good paper. There are some people out there who are really good at just, hammering out a great paper, but for the majority of us, it takes a lot of drafting. So drafting, again, is just writing your paper. I'm going to come back to drafting in a second, so hold on to that. The next step then is polishing. Polishing is where we start to clean things up. By the time you get to polishing, you are pretty much, done the majority of your ideas. Now, from polishing, we have 2 subsets. One, we have editing, and 2, we have revising. I'd like to talk about revising first. Revising is big changes. It's global changes to your paper. So when we revise, it's when we move a whole paragraph or we take a whole paragraph out. It's when we say like, oh, shoot, I need more research here. Or actually, that bit of research doesn't quite work with my argument here. These are really big changes to your paper. Editing is smaller changes. Editing, commas, punctuation, spelling, grammar, it's the small stuff. I would like to note, I care very, very much more about your revisions than your editing. I am much more concerned about your content than your commas. Not that commas don't matter, not that editing isn't important, because they are important. However, you can have perfect punctuation and really bad ideas, right, that are not well supported. Not that your ideas are bad. I'm talking about poorly executed ideas. But perfect punctuation. That perfect semicolon and dash and hyphen, they don't mean anything if your ideas aren't clear and don't make sense. So just jot down somewhere, revise, 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 edit. If you're down to the wire, and let's say your paper's due in 30 minutes and you have to choose revision over editing, revise. Please revise. Okay. So, pre-writing, planning, drafting, and polishing. So as I said in the beginning, this is not a linear process. So I like to just use my own writing process as an example of how this works for me. Everyone's process will be very different. In yoga, we always say that when two people are in the same pose, they look the same, but they feel different. And writing's the same way. When two people are writing, they often look the same, right? And the product is often very similar. But the experience inside and how to get there is very different. Okay, so you definitely don't need to take my example of my process and then think that has to be yours. I'm just sharing this because, well, it's me and my dog who's knocked out behind me and my computer. I don't have anyone else to give a good example. So when I write, the longest step of the process, which it is often for many people, is pre-writing, deciding what needs to be done and what I want to do. So I sit around, I think, I drive, I shower, I go to yoga, right? Those sorts of things help me find a little bit of like creative flow often. I often spend a lot of time, like maybe a couple days, just thinking about, okay, what do I want to do? For me, I have to like really take days to decide what it is I want to say. Then I skip all planning. I don't do any planning after I've decided what I wanted to say. I just draft. That's all I do. I pre-write, and then I draft and I draft and I draft. And then I look at my draft and I go through it and I say to myself, there's an idea working here and there's an idea working here. So I take those ideas that I think are working, I open a new document and I draft about them. And I draft and I draft and I draft. And then I look at that draft and I say, you know what? Here, this is the idea that I want to work with. That's how I decide my topic and what I want to do. Then, from there, I scoot back to planning. I take the topic that I've decided upon. I do my research. I make my outline. I do all the steps of planning that work for that particular topic. And from there, I go back and I redraft, adding in all this new perspective that I have now with my new research and my new information and my outline. And then for a while, which often feels like eternity, I go back and forth from drafting to planning, revising. Drafting, planning, revising. And I circle through draft and plan and revise, depending on what I'm doing. I don't know, maybe like a million times, I swear. It depends. If I have a deadline, not so much. Ooh, fun fact, for a long time I wrote celebrity gossip. I didn't have time to cycle through my process that much. I mean, there's really only so much revision you can say about the revision you can make about the Kardashians, you know. Just, it is what it is. But when I'm writing about more intellectual academic things, I cycle through drafting, planning, and revising a million times. The reason why I like to go back through drafting, planning, and revising is because revising helps me get things back into order. And then when I'm finally finished and I feel like I'm at a place where I'm like, cool, this is like pretty much done, I begin to edit. And that's because I'm done all the revisions, I'm done all the drafting. Now I just need to go back and make sure my word choice is good, my punctuation's good, there's not any, glaring mistakes, that sort of stuff. So that's my personal process. There are people who do much better when they go between pre-writing and planning and pre-writing and planning and then just draft and draft and draft and draft and draft, right? That is definitely sort of your thing to discover. And what I hope is that through this course, even though we don't have much time together, that you'll be able to figure out, okay, I write best in these sorts of ways. I really, really, really want you to get out of the habit of thinking that you can just begin writing and end writing and it's done, right? It just doesn't work that way. It's a science and an art, and often things that are art and science too take a lot of middle space, right? Where you have to function within that and do all sorts of different methods to get to the end. And really, in this class, I'm hoping that you learn what methods work best for you. So along the way, we will have a number of ways to explore this. And in this module, you'll have a chance to sort of play with this too. But in the meantime, let's get to work. I have another video that I'll be filming and posting soon. It should be up and ready to go by the time you're watching this. And it will be about rhetoric. So finish this video and rewatch it if you need to. Watch the next video and then get to work for the week. If you have questions, you can always email me at warfieldr@uncw.edu. Just a gentle reminder that Mondays and Tuesdays are rough. So if you email me Monday morning, you're probably not going to hear from me until Monday night, potentially Tuesday morning. So have a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next video. I guess more accurately, you'll see me, but maybe one day we can all meet on Skype or something. I will talk to you very soon.